Every morning at exactly 6:30, a poor waitress named Amara shared half of her breakfast with a frail old man who sat on a bench behind the hotel where she worked. The other staff called him a beggar. Her manager called feeding him a disgrace. Nobody bothered to ask his name, because nobody believed a tired old man in a worn-out coat could matter to anyone. But that old man owned the hotel. He owned the marble floors they walked on, the chandeliers above their heads, the very chairs they sat in to laugh at him. And on the morning the truth finally came out, the proud manager who had humiliated Amara in front of everyone would not be able to lift her face from the floor. This is a story about something simple. The way we treat people when we think they can do nothing for us is the truest measure of who we really are. Before we begin, if stories about quiet kindness and justice that arrives right on time mean something to you, do me one small favor. Tap subscribe, and in the comments, tell me your city and what time it is where you are watching from right now. I read every single one. Now let me take you back to a rainy Tuesday morning in July, to a bus stop in Ajagunle, and to the day Amara's ordinary life began to change. The rain in Ajagunle did not fall like rain in the rich parts of Lagos. It fell sideways. It came through the cracks in the zinc roofs, and it turned the narrow streets into rivers of mud and black water. And a girl who wanted to keep her shoes clean had to learn to dance through it. Amara had learned that dance a long time ago. She was 22 years old, and she had been waking before the rest of the world since she was 15. That Tuesday she woke at 4. She always woke at 4. There was no alarm clock in the one room she shared with her younger brother Chidi, only the sound of the first lorries coughing their way toward the markets, and her own body that had stopped needing to be told. She lit the small kerosene stove. She boiled water. She made 1 cup of Lipton tea, very weak, because the tin was almost finished and payday was still 11 days away. While the water boiled, she folded her uniform, the black skirt, and the white blouse with the little gold pin shaped like a crown. And she folded it the way her mother had taught her, with the seams matching, so that even a poor girl could look like she respected herself. Chidi was still sleeping. He was 18 now, a tall, quiet boy with their late mother's long fingers, and he was in his final year of secondary school. Amara looked at him for a moment in the grey light. She did not wake him. Let him sleep 1 more hour. The boy carried enough on his shoulders already, and she had decided years ago that whatever she could carry for him, she would carry, and she would not let him see how heavy it was. She wrapped 2 slices of bread in a clean piece of newspaper. She opened a small tin of sardines, the cheap kind in red oil, and she put 4 sardines on the bread and pressed it closed. Then she stopped. She looked at the bread, and she took half of it, wrapped it again in its own paper, and put it in the side pocket of her bag. That half was not for her. The bus stop was a 15-minute walk, and then it was 2 buses across the city, 1 to Apapa and 1 through the long crawl of traffic toward Victoria Island, where the rich kept their offices and their hotels and their air-conditioned lives. By the time Amara reached the staff entrance of the Crown, it was 6:18, and her shoes, against all her effort, were wet. The Adeyemi Crown Hotel rose 20 floors into the Lagos sky, all glass and gold, the kind of building that made poor people slow down on the road just to look up at it. Inside, the floors were white marble that the night cleaners polished until you could see your own tired face in them. The chandeliers in the main lobby had been imported from a country Amara could not point to on a map. A single night in one of the rooms upstairs cost more than she earned in 2 months. She knew this because Funke had told her once, with a smile that was not a smile, "1 night up there is 190,000 naira. You will never sleep in a bed like that, so do not even dream of it, just clean." Amara earned 47,000 naira a month. From that came rent, and Chidi's school fees, and transport, and food, and the small medicines for her own chest that sometimes tightened in the cold. There was never anything left. There was, on a good month, just barely enough. But she was not a girl who counted what she did not have. Her mother had taught her that too, in the last hard year of her life, lying on a thin mattress and still finding things to be grateful for. "Amara," she had said, "a closed hand cannot receive. Keep your hand open, even when there is nothing in it. God sees the open hand." So Amara kept her hand open, and every morning, before her shift began, before the proud guests came down for their breakfast of imported eggs and fresh juice, she walked out the back of the hotel to the small public bench under the flame tree, and she sat for a few minutes with the old man. She did not know his name. The first time she saw him, 3 months before, she had thought he was sleeping rough, the way many old men in Lagos with no one to care for them ended up sleeping rough, on benches, under bridges, forgotten. His coat was good once, but it was worn through at the elbows now. His shoes did not match the coat. His hands shook when he held them out, a fine tremble, and there was a sadness in his face so deep and so quiet that it had stopped her in her tracks. That first morning, she had simply given him her bread. She had not thought about it. She had seen a hungry old man, and she had an open hand, and the two things met the way her mother said they should. "Thank you, my daughter," he had said. His voice was rough, but it was not the voice of a street beggar. It was a careful voice, an educated voice, a voice that had once given orders. She had not noticed that then. She noticed it later. She had started calling him Papa. He never told her his real name, and she never pushed. In Lagos, you learned not to push at the things people kept hidden. Everyone was carrying something. That rainy Tuesday, she came around the corner, and there he was, as always, under the flame tree, the rain dripping off the broad leaves onto the collar of his ruined coat. He was looking up at the back of the hotel, at the 20 floors of glass, the way she herself sometimes looked at it. There was something on his face she could not read. It was not envy. It was something older than envy. "Papa," she said softly. "Good morning. You will catch cold sitting in this rain. Move under here. Come." She helped him shift along the bench to the dry part, under the small overhang, and she sat beside him and unwrapped the bread. "You did not have to bring me anything today," he said. His hand shook as he took it. "The rain is too much. You should keep it for yourself, my daughter." "I already ate," she lied. She lied easily and kindly. "Eat. You are too thin. Are you eating at all when I am not here?" He almost smiled. It was the closest thing to a smile she had seen on him. "You worry about an old beggar like I am your own father." "My own father I never knew," she said simply. "So maybe God is letting me practice on you." This time he did smile, and for a moment the deep sadness lifted off his face, and Amara saw something there she had not seen before. A sharpness. A light in the old man's eyes that did not belong to a man who had given up. She did not think much of it. She was 22, and she was tired, and she had a 12-hour shift in front of her. What she did not know, what she could not possibly have known, was that the old man under the flame tree had built that hotel. Every brick of it. 40 years ago he had stood on this exact spot when it was an empty lot of red earth, and he had promised a young woman, with a tray in her hands and flour on her apron, that he would build something beautiful, and he would put her name on it. His name was Tunde Adeyemi. The hotel behind him was the Adeyemi crown, and the young woman with the tray had been his wife, Folktale, who had died 14 months ago, and who had once, long before there was any money, worked as a waitress in a small restaurant on this very ground. That was why he came. Not to beg. He came because this was the last place on earth where he could still feel close to her, and because grief had hollowed him out so completely that he no longer cared what he looked like, or who saw him, or what they thought. After Folake died, and after the small stroke that had stolen the steadiness from his right hand 3 months ago, Tunde Adeyemi had let go of almost everything. He had handed the running of the hotel to managers he barely knew. He had stopped visiting the office. He had become, to the world, exactly what he appeared to be on that bench. An old man nobody recognized. Nobody at the Crown knew the founder's face anymore. The young ones had been hired in the last few years, long after he stopped coming. To them he was a story, a name on the building, a portrait somewhere in a corridor they never walked down. None of them had ever stood close enough to the real man to know that the beggar under the flame tree, the one the manager wanted chased away, was the one person in all of Lagos who could close the entire hotel with a single phone call. Amara folded the empty newspaper. She stood. She brushed the rain off her skirt. "I have to go in, Papa," she said. "Funke will be looking for a reason to shout this morning. I can feel it. Stay dry. I will bring you something hot tomorrow if I can manage it." He caught her wrist as she turned. His grip was weak, but his eyes were not. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "Every morning. In the rain. For a stranger who can give you nothing back. Tell me the truth." Amara thought about it. She did not give him a sweet answer. She gave him the real one. "Because somebody should," she said. "Because one day it might be me on a bench, and I would want somebody to see me. That is all. There is no big reason." She did not see his eyes fill. She was already gone, hurrying through the rain to the staff door. And so she missed the way the old man watched her go, and she missed the way his shaking hand pressed flat against his chest, as if something in there hurt and healed at the same time. Inside, the kitchen was already a storm of steam and shouting. Amara clocked in at 6:29. 1 minute to spare. She tied her apron, and she had not even reached the breakfast floor when she heard the voice she dreaded most. "You, Amara, come here." Funke Adebayo stood at the entrance to the dining room with her arms folded, and the look on her face was the look of a woman who had been waiting all morning for someone to punish. She was 35, the floor manager, and she wore her small power the way some people wear an expensive perfume, too much of it so that everyone in the room had to smell it. "Yes, Ma," Amara said. She kept her eyes down. She had learned that too. "I saw you," Funke said, "from the staff window, sitting outside with that dirty old beggar again, feeding him. In your uniform. He was hungry, Ma. He was hungry." Funk repeated the words slowly. "The way you repeat something a foolish child has said. Do you think this is a charity center? Do you think the guests upstairs, paying 190,000 naira a night, want to look out of their windows and see a beggar eating bread on our property, fed by my own staff? Eh? Do you want to drive away the kind of people who keep this roof over your useless head?" A few of the other waiters had slowed down to watch. They always did. Funke was at her happiest with an audience. "It will not happen again, Ma," Amara said quietly. It had better not. Funke stepped closer. She was taller than Amara, and she used it. "Let me tell you something, village girl. You smell of that bus you take every morning. You smell of suffering. The only reason you stand on this floor is because I have not yet found a girl who will scrub it better than you. The day I find her, you are finished. So you will keep your bread and your pity and your open hand to yourself. This is the Crown. We do not feed beggars here. We are the kind of place beggars are not even allowed to look at." She let the words land. She wanted them to hurt, and they did. But Amara had built a wall a long time ago, a quiet wall, and she stood behind it, and she said nothing. "Now go and set table 9, Funky said, turning away, already bored. "And fix your face. Nobody wants to be served by a girl who looks like she is going to a funeral." Amara went to set table 9. Her hands were steady. Her face was calm. That was the strange and stubborn thing about her. The thing Funky could never break, no matter how she tried. The more they pushed her down, the straighter she seemed to stand. She did not know, as she laid the heavy silver forks in their perfect rows, that out under the flame tree, the old man she had just fed was still sitting in the rain. She did not know that he had heard, through the open staff window, every single word that Funke had said. She did not know that something had shifted in him, something slow and cold and certain, the way the ground shifts before it decides to move. She only knew that it was Tuesday, that the rain was heavy, and that she had 11 days until payday, and 20,000 naira left to her name, and a brother who deserved better than the life she could give him. She had no idea that her ordinary morning had just become the first morning of everything that was about to change. The trouble began on a Thursday, 2 days later, and it began with a watch. Room 1412 belonged to a man named Chief Bassi, a heavy, loud politician's friend from Calabar, who had been staying at the Crown for 6 days and who treated everyone below him like furniture. He wore a gold Rolex on his thick wrist, and he liked to take it off at breakfast and set it on the white tablecloth beside his plate, so that everyone passing could see it, could see the weight of it, the shine of it. It was the kind of watch that cost more than Amara would earn in 15 years. That Thursday, Chief Bassi came down for breakfast at 8:40. He sat at table 7. He took off the watch, he set it on the cloth, and he ate a breakfast large enough for 3 men, and he shouted twice for more coffee, and Amara, who was serving that section, brought it to him both times with her eyes down and her voice soft. "Yes, Chief, and right away, Chief." At 9:25, he stood up to take a phone call out on the terrace. He did not take the watch. People like Chief Bassi did not worry about their watches the way poor people worried about their last 20 naira. He simply walked away from it, certain the world would keep it safe for him. At 9:31, when he came back, the watch was gone. What happened next happened fast, the way disasters always do. The chief began to shout. The shout brought Funke running. Funke brought Mr. Coker, the general manager. A smooth man of about 50 with a quiet voice and cold eyes, the kind of man who never raised his voice because he never needed to. Within 10 minutes, the breakfast floor had stopped. Guests were craning their necks. And in the middle of it stood Amara, because Amara had been the one serving table 7, and in the eyes of people who had already decided what the poor were capable of, that made her the thief. "Search her," Chief Bassi said. "Search the girl." She was the only one near my table. "Chief, please, let us handle this with discretion," Coker said smoothly. "Funk, take the girl to the back office." Amara did not run. A guilty girl might have run. She walked, with her chin up and her heart slamming against her ribs, through the swinging doors and into the small grey back office, and she stood there while Funke went through her bag, her apron, her pockets, with a slow thoroughness that was almost loving, because Funke had wanted this for a long time, and she could not believe her good fortune. There was no watch. Of course there was no watch. "It is not here," Amara said. Her voice was very quiet. "I did not touch it, ma. I have never stolen anything in my life. You can ask anyone who Euro. Be quiet." Funke held up a hand, and then slowly she smiled. "Maybe you hid it. Eh? You poor ones, you are clever. Maybe you passed it to someone. Or maybe our Euro." She paused, savoring it. "Our Euro. Maybe you put it somewhere you thought we would not look." She walked to the row of metal lockers where the staff kept their things. She walked straight to Amara's locker, not to the others, to Amara's, and she opened it, and she reached to the very back, behind the folded spare blouse, and her hand came out holding the gold Rolex, swinging it on one finger so that the whole room could see it shine. The breath went out of Amara's body. She actually felt it leave, the way you feel the wind knocked out of you when you fall hard on your back. For a moment, she could not speak at all. She could only stare at the watch, this thing she had never touched, hanging from Funke's finger in the cold grey light, and she understood, all at once and completely, what had been done to her. "I did not put that there," she whispered. "Ma, I swear to you, I swear on my mother's grave, I did not put that there. You know I did not." "You Euros, I know what I see," Funke said. Her voice had gone calm and terrible. "I see a thief. I see exactly what I always said you were. A village girl who came here smelling of the bus and decided she could help herself to what better people own. After everything this hotel did for you. After we gave you a uniform and a salary and a place to stand among decent people. Please, And now Amara's wall, the wall she had built so carefully over so many years, began to crack, because this was not an insult she could simply stand behind and endure. This was her name. This was the one thing she owned. Mr. Coker, sir, please. I have worked here 3 years. 3 years, and not one cup has gone missing, not one spoon. Why would Duros on a Thursday in front of everyone Duros? Why would I take a watch I could never even sell? Where would a girl like me sell a watch like that? Think, sir. Please think. It does not make sense. For just a moment, something flickered behind Coker's cold eyes. Because it did not make sense, and a smart man knew it. But making sense was not the point. The point was that Chief Bassi was an important guest, and an important guest needed his watch found and his anger soothed, and a thief delivered up to him. And it was so much simpler, so much cleaner. If the thief was a poor waitress nobody would miss, than if the hotel had to admit it did not know what had happened. The evidence is in her locker, Coker said quietly. That is what matters. Funke, has anything like this happened with this girl before? And here, Funke told the lie that finished it. Small things, sir, she said, lowering her eyes as if it pained her. Food from the kitchen. A guest complained 2 weeks ago about money. I did not report it because I felt sorry for her. I see now that my pity was a mistake. It was all invention, every word. But it was said in a soft, regretful, reasonable voice, and reasonable lies are the most dangerous kind. And Amara watched the trap close over her and knew there was nothing she could say that would open it again. You are dismissed, Coker said. Effective immediately. You will leave the premises now. Consider yourself fortunate that Chief Bassi has agreed not to involve the police, as a courtesy to the hotel. You will not receive this month's salary. It will be held against the cost of the inconvenience. And you will not use the crown as a reference, ever. Now, get your things and go. Amara stood very still. 11 days to payday, 20,000 naira to her name. And now no salary and no job and no reference, and a stain on her name that would follow her to every other door she knocked on in this city. Because Lagos was large, but word among hotel managers was small and chiddy. Chidi's final examination fees were due in 9 days. 215,000 naira, the school had said. And there was a deadline, and a boy who missed the deadline did not write the examination. And a boy who did not write the examination did not finish school. And a boy who did not finish school in this country was finished before he had begun. She had been saving for it for a year. The money was nearly there. This month's salary was supposed to be the last piece. She thought of all of this in the space of about 4 seconds, standing in the grey office with the watch swinging on Funke's finger. Can I say one thing? She said. Her voice did not shake. She was proud of that later. It did not shake, not to defend myself. You have decided, and I am too small to argue with people like you. I only want to say one thing, and then I will go. Coker said nothing, which she took as permission. My mother used to say that what you do in the dark, the sun will eventually carry into the light. I do not know who put that watch in my locker, but God knows, and one day the sun will carry it out. I hope when that day comes, you remember this morning. I hope you remember that you had a chance to think, and you chose not to. She looked at Funke then, directly, for the first time. And you. I have never done anything to you but my work, and you have hated me for it since the first day. I do not know why. But I forgive you. Not because you deserve it. Because hating you would cost me more than I can afford. Then she took off her apron. She folded it, seams matching, the way her mother had taught her, and she set it on the desk. She took her bag with the empty newspaper still in the side pocket, and she walked out of the Adeyemi Crown Hotel with her chin up, and her shoes still faintly damp. And she did not let herself cry until she was 3 streets away. And even then she only let herself do it, for as long as it took to walk to the bus stop, and not 1 second longer, because she had a brother to feed, and tears did not buy bread. What Amara did not know, as she sat on the bus going home in the middle of the day for the first time in 3 years, was that Funke had taken the watch herself the previous evening. She had lifted it from Chief Bassie's table during the dinner service, when he left it there as he always did, drunk and careless. She had planned to keep it. The Rolex was worth more than 2 years of Funke's salary, and Funke had debts, and a brother of her own with very different appetites from Chidi's, and a lifestyle she could not afford on what the crown paid her. The watch was meant to be hers. But when the chief raised the alarm that Thursday morning, Funke had panicked, and in her panic she had seen, all at once, a way to turn her crime into a weapon. She would plant the watch on Amara. She would be rid of the girl she hated, and the theft would be solved, and no one would ever search the floor manager, because who searches the one doing the searching? It was clever. It was cruel. And it would have worked perfectly, except for one thing Funke did not know. It would have worked except that the Adeyemi Crown Hotel had, 11 months earlier, on the insurance company's strict instruction, installed a new security system. 41 cameras. High definition, recording continuously to a server in the basement, kept for 90 days. There was a camera over the dining room. There was a camera in the corridor outside the back office. And there was a camera, small and black and easy to forget, mounted high in the corner of the staff locker room, the very last place anyone would think to look, pointing directly at the row of metal lockers. Funke had forgotten about that camera. People always forget the camera that watches them. They remember the ones that watch others. And there was something else Funke did not know. Something that would matter even more than the camera in the end. She did not know that the old beggar she had ordered chased away from the flame tree 2 days before. The dirty old man she had been so disgusted to see eating bread on the hotel's property, owned the building, owned the cameras, owned the server in the basement, and owned, in a very real sense, Funke's entire future. She did not know that on that very Thursday afternoon, while Amara wept her brief and bitter tears at the bus stop, the old man was making a phone call. The first phone call he had made to his own office in 14 months. His shaking hand held the phone to his ear. And when his lawyer answered, surprised and a little frightened to hear the voice of a man everyone had assumed was finished, Tunde Adeyemi said only 5 words. "I am coming back," quietly. Here is the thing that nobody who plotted against Amara understood about her. They thought that taking her job would take her kindness. They thought the two things were connected, that she was only good because she could afford to be, that the open hand would close the moment the world stopped putting anything in it. They were wrong. The morning after she was dismissed, Amara woke at 4. Her body still woke at 4. She lay in the dark and she listened to Chidi breathing, and she felt the fear come up in her chest like cold water rising in a well, the fear of the 9 days and the 215,000 naira and the empty future. And she let herself feel it for exactly as long as she had let herself cry at the bus stop. And then she got up. She made the weak tea. She wrapped 2 slices of bread and 4 sardines, and then she stopped and looked at the bread, and she did the same thing she did every morning. She took half. She wrapped it separately. She put it in the side pocket of her bag. Chidi stirred. "Sis," he said, his voice thick with sleep. "Why are you up? Is it not your day off?" He did not know yet. She had not been able to tell him yet. She had decided to carry it 1 more day before she made him carry it too. "Yes," she said, "just going out for small air. Sleep." She took 2 buses across the city. She had no job to go to. She had no reason on earth to spend her last few hundred naira on transport to a hotel that had thrown her out like a thief. But there was an old man under a flame tree who would be hungry, and who had no one else, and Amara had decided a long time ago what kind of person she was going to be. And she was not going to let Funke Adebayo decide it for her. The rain had stopped. The morning was grey and washed clean. And the old man was there exactly where he always was, on the bench under the flame tree, looking up at the glass tower that had taken everything from her. "Papa," she said. Good morning. He turned, and the look on his face when he saw her was strange, complicated, a look she could not read at all. There was surprise in it, but underneath the surprise was something that looked almost like pain. My daughter, I bring you food, don't I? She sat down. She unwrapped the bread and put it in his shaking hands. Eat, while it is fresh. He did not eat. He held the bread, and he looked at her, and he said, I heard. 2 days ago. I was sitting here and I heard through the window the things the woman said to you. About the bread, about the beggar. His voice was very low, and I have heard since what they did to you yesterday. The watch. The lie. They dismissed you. Amara went still. How do you know about the watch? An old man on a bench hears many things, he said, which was not an answer, but she let it pass. Tell me the truth, Amara. Did you take it? And she looked at him, this old man she had fed every morning for 3 months, this stranger she had no reason to trust, and every reason today of all days to be angry at the whole world. And she found that she did not want to lie to him, not even the small, kind lies she told to spare people. No, she said. I did not take it. Somebody put it in my locker. I think I know who. But I cannot prove it, and even if I could, who would believe a poor girl over a manager? That is not how it works, Papa. You know that is not how it works. The poor do not get believed. We just get blamed, and then we get up the next morning and we keep going, because what else is there? And yet, he said softly, here you are, with no job, with your name ruined. And the first thing you do, the very first morning, is take 2 buses across this whole city, with money you do not have, to feed an old beggar who can do nothing for you. He shook his head slowly, and now she could see, clearly, that his eyes were wet. Why, Amara? After what the world did to you yesterday, why are you still keeping your hand open? Because if I close it, she said, then they win. Not Funky, not the manager. The whole hard world wins, the thing that tells you to look after yourself and let everyone else suffer. My mother kept her hand open until the day she died, and she died with nothing, Papa. Nothing but a son she could not see grow up, and a daughter who had to leave school at 15. And you would think that should have taught me to close my hand. But it taught me the opposite. Because I was there. I saw her die, and I am telling you, the open hand was the only thing she had that the world could not take. They took everything else. They could not take that. And they will not take it from me either. The old man put down the bread. He covered his face with his 2 shaking hands, and his shoulders moved, and Amara realized with alarm that he was weeping. This old man, weeping the way old men weep, silently, as if they have learned to be ashamed of it. Papa, she said, frightened now. Papa, what is it? What did I say? I am sorry, Akuras. You did not say anything wrong. He wiped his face roughly with the back of his hand. You reminded me of someone. That is all. Someone I lost. She used to say almost exactly those words to me, the open hand. She said it for 40 years, and God forgive me, I had started to forget the sound of her saying it. And now an angel on a bench has said it back to me, and He stopped, he could not go on. They sat in silence for a while. A bird moved in the wet leaves of the flame tree above them. The city was waking up all around, the traffic thickening, the day beginning, and for these few minutes none of it touched the 2 of them on the bench. I am going to tell you something now, the old man said at last. And I need you to listen, and not be afraid, and not get up and run. Can you do that? You are frightening me. I know. I am sorry. Just listen. He took a breath. Amara, I am not our Euros. And that was the exact moment that it happened. Later, she would replay it 1,000 times, and she would never be sure she had not somehow caused it, somehow brought it on by frightening him, even though the doctors told her again and again that it had been coming for months, that it had nothing to do with her, that if anything she was the reason he was still alive. The old man's face changed. In the middle of the word, his face simply changed. The left side of it seemed to slide downward like a candle going soft in the heat. His eyes went wide and confused. He reached for her, his good hand grabbing at her arm, and his mouth moved but no words came out, only a thick, terrible sound, and then his whole body began to tilt sideways off the bench. "Papa!" She caught him. He was heavier than he looked. She went down onto the wet ground with him, holding his head, holding it off the concrete, and she was shouting now, shouting for help. "Somebody, please, help me. Somebody call an ambulance, please." People stopped. People always stopped to look. But in Lagos, looking and helping are two different things, and for a few endless seconds nobody moved. They only stared at the poor girl on the ground, holding the old beggar. And Amara understood that no one was going to help her, that to all of them this was just another piece of street suffering, two poor strangers. Nothing to do with them. So she helped herself. She had no money for an ambulance, and an ambulance in Lagos traffic might take an hour anyway. She held the old man, and she shouted at the gathering crowd until a Danfo driver, a young man with kind eyes who reminded her of Chidi, finally pushed forward and said, "My bus is there. Carry him. I know the general hospital. Quick, quick." They carried him into the Danfo, Amara and the driver, and one other man who had finally been shamed into helping, and they laid him across the back seat with his head in Amara's lap, and the driver drove like a madman through the morning traffic, leaning on his horn, mounting the curb twice, and Amara held the old man's head and watched his face and talked to him the whole way. "Stay with me, Papa. You hear me? Stay with me. You are not allowed to go. I did not feed you for 3 months, so you could die on me now. Stay, stay." His good eye found hers. He could not speak. But his good hand found her hand, and he gripped it, and he held on. She did not let go. Not in the Danfo. Not when they reached the hospital and the nurses came running with a trolley. Not when they wheeled him through the doors, marked emergency, where she was not allowed to follow. She walked beside the trolley holding his hand until the very last possible moment, until a nurse physically peeled her fingers away and said, kindly but firmly, "Madam, you have to let us work now. Wait outside, we will come and tell you." So she waited. She sat on a hard plastic chair in the corridor of the general hospital, in her ordinary clothes, with the empty newspaper still in her bag, and she waited. She did not think even once about the job interview, because there had been one. That was the thing she would never tell anyone, the thing that only she would ever know. The day before, in the bitter hours after her dismissal, a friend of a friend had sent word of an opening, a waitress position at a restaurant in Surulere. Nothing like the Crown, but a job, a real job with a real salary. And the owner had agreed to see her that very morning at 9 o'clock. And he had been clear that he had 10 other girls to see, and the first one who impressed him would get it, and if she was late, she should not bother coming at all. It was 8:50 when the old man's face slid sideways on the bench. She could have laid him down gently and run for her interview. A reasonable person might have. He was a stranger. He was a beggar. She had 9 days and 215,000 naira, and a brother whose whole future hung on her getting work. Any work, immediately. The interview was the sensible choice. The interview was survival. She did not even think about it. When his face changed, the interview simply ceased to exist. There was only the old man and her 2 hands, and the one thing she knew how to do, which was to keep her hand open, even when it cost her everything. She missed the interview. The job in Surulere went to another girl, and Amara sat in the hospital corridor and did not regret it for a single second. And that, more than anything she had ever done, more than 3 months of bread under a flame tree, was the true measure of who she was. It was almost 2 hours before a doctor came out, a tired young woman with a clipboard, who looked at Amara and said, "Are you the family of the gentleman who came in this morning? The elderly man, the stroke?" "I am our Euro." Amara hesitated. "I am not family. I am the one who brought him." "Is he Euros?" "He is stable. It was a stroke, his second, I think, but we caught it in time." "You caught it in time?" Another 20-30 minutes, and we would be having a very different conversation. The doctor looked at her more closely. You did everything right. Most people would have walked past. You should know that. You saved his life. Amara's eyes filled. Can I see him? Soon. He is resting. But Madama Euro. The doctor glanced down at her clipboard, and a strange expression crossed her face. A kind of confusion. We need to reach his family. Do you know anything about him? A name? Anyone we can call? Because we found a card in his coat. An old one, tucked in the lining. And I have to be honest with you. When we read it, we thought it must be a mistake. She turned the clipboard around, so Amara could see the small white card she had clipped to it. The card was worn soft at the edges, the printing faded, but it was still readable. And Amara read it, and the corridor seemed to tilt very slowly around her the way the old man had tilted off the bench. The card said, Tundi Adeyemi, funder and chairman. The Adeyemi Crowned Hotel. Amara read the card 3 times. The letters did not change. That cannot be right, she heard herself say. He is our Euro. He sits on a bench. Behind the hotel. I have been feeding him for 3 months. He is our Euro. The word stuck in her throat. Beggar. She had almost called the old man she loved a beggar. I know, the doctor said gently. We thought the same. But the card was sewn into the lining of his coat, madam. People do not sew a stranger's card into their coat. We have called the number on it. Someone is coming. Someone came. 40 minutes later, a tall, serious man of about 40 strode into the corridor, followed by 2 others, and the moment he saw the doctor, he said, Where is he? Where is my father? I am Daniel Adeyemi. I got a call that my father was here, that he had a stroke of euros. Where is he? And then his eyes fell on Amara, sitting small and frightened on the plastic chair, and his face hardened with suspicion. Because that is what wealth teaches you, to see a threat in every poor stranger near your father's hospital bed. Who is this? He said. It was the doctor who answered before Amara could. This, she said, is the young woman who saved your father's life. She was with him when the stroke happened. She held his head off the ground. She found transport. She brought him here herself, and she has been sitting in this corridor for 3 hours, refusing to leave, until she knew he was alive. If you are looking for someone to thank, sir, you can start with her. Daniel Adeyemi looked at Amara for a long moment. Something in his face shifted, the suspicion loosening into confusion, and then into something that was almost shame. You are the one, he said slowly. You are the waitress from the hotel. You know about me? My father called me yesterday. The first time he has called me in months. Since my mother died, he has barely spoken to anyone. He shut us all out. He would not let us help him. He just disappeared into his grief. Daniel's voice cracked slightly, and he steadied it. But yesterday he called. And he told me about a girl who fed him bread every morning under a flame tree. A girl who did not know who he was. He told me she had been accused of something she did not do and thrown out like a criminal. And he said, Euro. Daniel stopped. What did he say? Amara whispered. He said he had finally found one honest person inside his own hotel. And he said he was going to make it right. He said it was the first thing in 14 months that he wanted to live for. Daniel passed a hand over his face. Then this morning I got the call that he was here. I thought I had lost him too. I thought, He could not finish, and Amara, who had nothing, who had lost her job and her name and her last hope of paying her brother's fees, stood up from the plastic chair and did the only thing she knew how to do for a person in pain. She put her hand on the rich man's arm, this stranger, this billionaire's son, and she said, He is alive. The doctor says you caught it in time. He is going to be all right. Hold on to that. The rest we can carry tomorrow. We, she said, we, to a man whose watch alone was worth more than her life. And Daniel Adeyemi, who had been raised among people who measured everyone by what they could take, stared at this poor girl who had just offered to help him carry his own father's illness. And he understood, finally, exactly what his father had been trying to tell him on the phone. Tunde Adeyemi spent 6 days in the hospital. He could not speak clearly at first, but his mind was sharp, sharper than it had been in over a year, as if the kindness of one girl had reached into him and turned a light back on. And every one of those 6 days, Amara came. She came in the morning, before the family arrived, because she did not want to be in the way of important people. And she sat with the old man and she talked to him about nothing, about the rain, about Chidi, about her mother, and she fed him soft food with a spoon when his hand shook too much to hold it, and slowly, day by day, his speech came back. On the 4th day he could talk again, mostly, and he held her hand with his good hand and he said, "I lied to you, Amara, all those mornings. I let you believe I was a poor old beggar." "You did not lie," she said. "I never asked who you were. You let me see what I wanted to see. That is not the same as lying." "Why are you not angry?" he said. "I own that hotel. I could have stopped them. The day they threw you out, I could have walked in there and stopped it with one word, and instead I sat on that bench and I let it happen. I let them ruin your name. Are you not angry at me for that?" Amara was quiet for a moment. "A little," she admitted, because she had decided long ago never to lie to this man. "A little, yes. But then I think, Ayuro, if you had stopped them with one word that day, I would never have known what they really were, and neither would you. Sometimes the only way to know what is in a person is to let them think no one is watching. You did not let them ruin me, Papa. You let them show you their true faces. There is a difference, and anyway, Euro," she smiled. "Euro, it is done. What is the use of carrying anger to a sick man's bedside? I did not come here to be paid back. I came here because you are my Papa, and Papa was sick." The old man closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were clear and hard and full of purpose. "On Friday," he said, "I am being discharged, and on Saturday there is the hotel's anniversary gathering. 30 years of the crown. All the staff will be there, in the grand ballroom, and the managers, and the board, and the press. I have not attended in 2 years. They are not expecting me." He gripped her hand. "I want you to come, Amara, as my guest. Will you come?" "Papa, I cannot. They threw me out. I am not allowed €2. "You are allowed," he said, "because I say you are allowed, and I own the building. Come on Saturday. Wear whatever you have. It does not matter what you wear. Just come and stand at the back and watch. And whatever happens, whatever you see, do not be afraid. The sun is about to carry something into the light. You told me it always does. Let us see if you were right." So on Saturday evening, Amara came. The grand ballroom of the Adeyemi crown was a sea of gold and white. 300 people filled it, the entire staff in their best uniforms. The board members in their agbadas and their dark suits, 2 reporters with cameras, waiters circulating with trays of small, expensive things. At the front was a stage with a podium, and on the podium a microphone, and behind it a great screen showing the hotel's logo, the Golden Crown. Amara stood at the very back in a clean blue dress that had been her mother's, holding her own hands so they would not shake. Across the room she saw Funke resplendent in red, laughing too loudly at something Mr. Coker had said. Neither of them saw her. Why would they look at the back? Important people never look at the back. At 8 o'clock, Mr. Coker took the stage to begin the speeches. He was halfway through a smooth, oily address about the Crown's proud 30 years, about excellence and family and tradition, when the great doors at the side of the ballroom opened, and Tunde Adeyemi walked in. He was not wearing the worn coat. He was wearing a deep blue agbada, immaculate, the cloth heavy with quiet money, and his son Daniel walked on one side of him and his lawyer on the other. And though he leaned on a cane and walked slowly, there was nothing weak in the way he came. The whole room turned, the whole room went silent, and then the whispering began, rippling outward. Oga, the chairman, that is the founder, that is Chief Adeyemi himself. He is here. He has not been seen in 2 years, sir. Mr. Coker's smooth voice died in his throat. The color drained out of his face, because Coker, unlike the younger staff, was old enough to know exactly who Tunde Adeyemi was. And Coker, unlike anyone else in that room, knew the precise contents of his own conscience, and he understood in the space of a single heartbeat that the old man walking toward the stage was the one person in Lagos who could destroy him. "Chief Adeyemi," Coca stammered, abandoning the podium. "Sir, what are Euro? What an honor. We did not know you were coming. We would have prepared Euros." "I know you did not know," Tun said. His voice was not loud. He did not need it to be loud. The whole room had gone so quiet that a whisper would have carried. "That is rather the point of a surprise, Mr. Coca. People show you who they truly are when they think you are not coming." He climbed the 3 steps to the stage, slowly, leaning on his cane, refusing Daniel's offered arm. He stood at the podium. He looked out at the 300 faces, at his staff, at his board, at the 2 reporters whose cameras had begun, very quietly, to record. "30 years ago," he said, "I built this hotel. I built it for a woman. Some of you are too young to have known her. Her name was Folake, and before she was my wife, before there was a single naira of any of this, she was a waitress. She carried trays. She wore an apron. She got shouted at by men who thought a tray in her hands made her less than them." He paused. "She died 14 months ago, and I will be honest with you because I am too old now for anything but honesty. When she died, I stopped caring about all of this. The gold, the crown. I let it run itself. I sat outside on a bench, like an old fool, because that bench is where she used to take her break 40 years ago, and it was the only place left where I could still feel her. The room was utterly still. And while I sat on that bench," Tundi continued, "looking like exactly what grief had made of me, a tired old man in a worn coat, something happened that I want all of you to hear. Every single morning, a young woman from this hotel came out and gave me half of her breakfast. She did not know who I was. She thought I was a beggar. She had almost nothing herself, and she gave me half of it, in the rain, every single day, and she asked for nothing. And she never once knew that the old man she was feeding owned the very building she worked in." His voice thickened. "Her name is Amara, and 2 weeks ago this hotel accused her of stealing and threw her into the street and ruined her name and took her salary, while I sat outside and heard every word of it through the window." A gasp went through the room. Heads began to turn, searching. Funke had gone very white. "Now," Tundi said, and his voice changed, hardened, became the voice of the man who had built an empire out of red earth. "I am an old man, and I am tired, and I do not have the patience anymore for long speeches or for accusations I cannot prove. So I am not going to accuse anyone of anything. I am simply going to show you all something, and you may draw your own conclusions. Daniel." Daniel Adeyemi stepped to a laptop at the side of the stage. The golden crown vanished from the great screen, and in its place appeared an image that everyone in that ballroom recognized at once. The staff locker room, the row of grey metal lockers. Date and time stamped in the corner. The Wednesday evening before the Thursday theft. The footage played. And the whole room watched, in total silence, as Funke Adebayo walked alone into the locker room, looked carefully over her shoulder, took a gold watch from her own handbag, opened a particular locker, and pushed the watch deep into the back of it, behind a folded blouse. Then she closed the locker, looked over her shoulder one more time, and walked out. The silence after the footage ended was the loudest silence Amara had ever heard. "That locker," Tunde said quietly, "belonged to Amara. And the watch, as you can all see, was placed there the night before, by the very person who found it the next morning, and who used it to destroy an innocent girl. There is more. My auditors have spent the last 6 days going through the staff payroll, at my instruction. We have found that for the past 2 years, certain wages have been quietly reduced before they reached the staff who earned them. Small amounts, spread across many people, so that no single person would notice or complain. A few thousand naira here, a few thousand there. It adds up, over 2 years, to just over 4 million naira. The records lead to 2 signatures, Mr. Coca's and Madame Funke's." Coca sat down very suddenly in a chair that happened to be behind him. Funke did not sit down. Funke stood frozen in her red dress in the middle of the silent ballroom, with 300 people turning to stare at her, with the two cameras now pointed directly at her face. And she opened her mouth and no sound came out of it at all. "I told you I would not accuse anyone," Tunde said. "I have not. I have only shown you what was done in the dark." He turned, and his eyes found Amara at the back of the room, and his stern old face softened completely. "Amara, my daughter, come up here. Come and stand where everyone can see you. You have stood at the back of rooms your whole life, not tonight." And 300 faces turned to the back of the ballroom, to the poor girl in the blue dress that had been her mother's. And Amara, with her chin up and her hands no longer shaking, began to walk forward through the parting crowd toward the light. Amara walked the whole length of that ballroom alone, and she did not hurry, and she did not look down. When she reached the stage and climbed the 3 steps, Tunde Adeyemi took her hand in his good hand and turned her to face the room, and he held her hand up beside his own, the billionaire and the waitress, and he said, "This is the honest one. I searched my whole hotel, and I found exactly one. Look at her well. Some of you walked past her every day for 3 years and saw nothing but a uniform. What happened to Funke and Mr. Coker did not happen with shouting. Tunde Adeyemi had buried his wife and survived 2 strokes, and he had no appetite left for drama. It happened quietly, the way real consequences usually do. Both of them were dismissed that same night. Their employment ended in front of the entire staff. The 4 million naira they had taken from the wages of people who could least afford to lose it was traced. Person by person, every cleaner and waiter and porter who had been quietly shorted, and every naira was to be repaid, with the hotel covering what could not be recovered from the 2 of them directly. The watch, and the deliberate framing of an innocent woman to cover a theft, was a criminal matter, and the hotel's lawyers handed the security footage to the police, and Funke Adebayo learned, in the weeks that followed, that the law moves slowly, but it does move, and that a thing done in the dark is still a thing, even after the lights come on. Mr. Coker, who had signed the payroll, faced his own reckoning with the authorities over the missing wages. Tunde did not gloat over any of it. When a reporter asked him that night whether he felt he had won, the old man looked tired and sad and said, "Nobody wins this kind of thing. 2 people threw away good lives for a watch, and a few thousand naira a month. That is not a victory. That is a waste. The only thing worth celebrating tonight is that the girl they tried to bury is standing in the light where she belongs. The rest is just cleaning up a mess." For Amara, the world turned over. Her name was cleared completely, publicly, in front of everyone who had heard it dragged through the mud. She was offered her job back, and more than her job. Tunde Adeyemi, who had built an empire and had no intention of letting it pass to people who measured human beings by their uniforms, asked her to train, with full pay, to one day help manage the staff she had once served beside, on one condition that he stated in front of the whole board: that she never, as long as she worked under that golden crown, stop treating the lowest person in the building exactly the way she had treated an old beggar on a bench. Chidi's examination fees were paid, not as charity, Tunde was careful to say, but as a scholarship from the hotel's foundation, the very foundation he had been too lost in grief to run for over a year, and which Amara's kindness had in the end brought back to life. The boy wrote his examinations. He passed. He is at university now, studying to be a doctor, because of half a slice of bread given away in the rain by a sister who refused to close her hand. And the bench under the flame tree is still there. Tunde Adeyemi sits on it most mornings, stronger now, and most mornings Amara sits with him for a few minutes before her work begins, and they share a breakfast, the 2 of them, the way they did when each of them thought the other had nothing. Only now they both know better. Now they both know that neither of them ever had nothing. They each had the one thing the whole hard world could not take: the open hand. I want to step out of the story for a moment, because there is something here I cannot stop thinking about, and I suspect you cannot either. We have built a world that reads people the way Funke read Amara, by the uniform, by the salary, by the smell of the bus. We decide in half a second who is worth our patience and who is not, and almost always we decide it based on what a person can do for us. The waiter, the cleaner, the security man at the gate, the old woman selling oranges in traffic. We look right through them. We have all done it. I have done it. And if you are honest, so have you. And the quiet, frightening truth of a story like this is not that Tunde Adeyemi turned out to be a billionaire. That is the fairy tale part, the part that makes it satisfying to watch. The real truth is the part that is true in your life and mine, where the old man on the bench is just an old man on the bench, where the cleaner is just a cleaner, where there is no secret billionaire and no hidden camera and no public reveal coming to reward the kind and punish the cruel. In the real world, most kindness is never repaid, and most cruelty is never exposed, and the open hand mostly receives nothing back at all. So why keep it open? Amara answered that on the bench, before she knew any of what was coming, and I think her answer is the whole point. She said, because somebody should. Because one day it might be me on that bench, and I would want somebody to see me. She did not keep her hand open because she expected the man to be rich. She kept it open when she was certain he was poor. That is the only kind of kindness that actually counts for anything. The kind that expects nothing. The kind you give when you are sure no one important is watching, because the note being watched is exactly when it is real. There is a wage theft happening in the world that no auditor will ever find. It is the dignity we quietly take from people every day by treating them as less than us. And the lesson of Amara is not that being kind makes you rich. Sometimes it does not. It is that being kind is the one thing that makes you, no matter what happens, impossible to truly rob. They took her job, her name, her salary, her last hope. They could not touch the part of her that mattered. She walked out of that hotel with her chin up because the only thing that could have broken her was a thing she refused to give away. Treat the cleaner like a human being. Learn the name of the man at the gate. Give the half slice of bread when there is no camera, no reward, no chance of it ever coming back to you. Not because the old beggar might secretly own the building. He almost never does. But because of who you become in the giving. That is the only payment that is guaranteed, and it turns out to be the only one worth having. If this story moved you, do not leave in silence. Tell me in the comments, honestly, who is the person in your daily life that you walk past without really seeing? The one you could choose, starting tomorrow, to actually see? Write it down. And while you are there, tell me your city, and what time it is where you are watching from. And if a poor girl named Amara earned your respect tonight, tap subscribe. So the next story can find you too. Keep your hand open. Somebody should.